the tools that you have enhance the relationships that you want to create. And a lot of us don't look at it that way. If you pick the right ones, they only increase your asset. Let's talk about assets and tools. Let's talk about scaling and growing, being able to capitalize on this amazing industry, because really there is no ceiling. And I want to make a distinction as to what actually works and what doesn't. Brett was supposed to be here, but he had an emergency. So I'm taking over. And I want to talk to you about what I feel have been some of the most amazing tools we have. And we do have a list, and I'm trying to get them from my marketing director. So as soon as I get that, I'll send it over to you. And Mach, I know you're in the background. We have a list for Tristan and Associates on the real estate side that indicates all of our tech, all of the paid leads, all of the whole process. If you have that handy, dump it over in the chat for me, and I can then share it and go through with it. But I have something else first. Let me remind everybody that we do have a Chime event happening on September 8th, and I've got the link there. We just dropped it. Go ahead and register. We've already got, I think we blasted it out one time, and we have like over 300 of you registered already. I think it's a 3-hour event with amazing speakers, all high level, all Chime, and all real estate related. So jump on there. Monch, thanks so much for dumping that. I appreciate it. And I think now we've got a good amount of people on the webinar, so good time to get started. First, I want to show you what we started with when it came to real estate. So started as a single agent at Century 21 back in 2004. And I did all of the normal things that all real estate agents did at the time, which was door knocking, cold calling, open houses, all that good stuff, right? As the world transitioned over, Joe, I know, me too, man. I'm looking forward to the summit. As the world transitioned over to more of an attraction business through social media, through all types of media and online, we started looking at other opportunities. And so I want to start with really this. It says at the very top, it says virtual staff organization chart, but there's a lot more to that. And it really started with one person that I hired for real estate, and it was my assistant, who became eventually my director of operations. And when you start treating your business like an actual business, meaning there's an organizational part to it. Let me go back to you. There's a whole tracking process of all of the incoming leads. This is why I love Chime, all the incoming leads. There's tracking for commissions. And then there's the understanding that even if you go on a team as a team leader, creator, brokerage, or an individual agent, mega agent, single agent, any level, at some point, you're going to have to hire someone to be able to scale and grow and to treat it like an actual business. And that once you start doing that, then you start being able to actually create a business that you can either leave a legacy with or transition over and sell it, right? Because we do have an asset in our real estate business as Tristan and Associates, and of course on our brokerage too. But on the team side, it's an asset. It's become an asset because I treat it like one. And this is where I want to show you. This is where it starts. It really starts with the middle. For me, it started with a transaction coordinator, and then I branched off to getting a full-time assistant who then became a director of operations. For me, because I was lead generating, and specifically as I was growing from online leads, I went this route up here. And this is what we started with as I started growing. I got a lead coordinator, which was initially just one guy who's still with me, by the way. His name's Jacob Fry. He helped me create Lab Code Agents. This lead coordinator of mine was the person that would call all the incoming leads. So when we take a look at the back end of Chime, he's still on the back end. And let me see if I can log in just to kind of play out to show you what we've got there. Here it is. So let me show you now the back end of Chime. As we get leads that come through. So this is today, early on in the day, we've got three people in. When leads are coming through, they're assigned for us like a round robin. People get certain percentages, and now they're assigned, let's say, to Luis, to Jacob, to Mark, to somebody on the team. Now, as that happens, though, our ISA or our lead coordinator is also paying attention, because sometimes our agents aren't able to reach out to them. So there's always, for us, there's always somebody who's calling all of these. It's not just our agents. And so you go back to our org chart here for the director of operations. We've got a lead coordinator now who's in charge of making these calls or quarterbacking these leads if nobody calls them, right? And as I started growing, I realized, hey, you know what? This is just Chime. Like if we go to all our leads, well, I have to change the filter, reset. Just the leads in Chime, I have about 20,000 just in Chime. Our other databases combined, we have over 100,000. And so just with this, we have a pond, we have leads that don't get assigned because they shouldn't be assigned yet. They're being nurtured, all of that. So then I said, hey, you know what? We're missing a big opportunity here because we're not hitting up our database. And so then I said, hey, Jake, we need somebody else to help us. And that's when we started looking at expanding this because, and this is what the biggest mistake as you expand, team or mega agent, you typically look outward and you're like, that agent or that team is doing amazing. We should just copy them. And I want you to take a step back and say, is that my strength? Right? Because for us, online leads was how I led and how I grew everything with, right? Google PPC, Facebook lead ads, SEO, Craigslist even. I want you to take a look at it and say, hey, is that my strength? Is that something I should scale with on that angle? And so when I look at my org chart, I'm like, well, this is where we started, of course. And then it grew into, I needed another ISA for our database. And then what about incoming calls from our sign calls and from our marketing? I need now an ISA for outgoing calls because we've always called for sale by owners and expires and just listed, just sold, and we're great at it. So I needed to train one. And then you know what? We got so big, we're like, we need an ISA that's roaming, one that goes between these, because what we found is sometimes they need a little bit more help. Sometimes the database one needs a little bit more help. And sometimes Jake needs a little bit more help. And so as we started growing, we're like, you know what? We also need an ISA for recruiting as a team, as a brokerage, right? And so that's where we're at right now. But that's what I started growing first. Now, you don't even need a team, an actual real estate team for this. You could just have a database with amazing leads coming through and one showing agent or you being the one that's showing everything. So we can do it in different ways. I want to show you that first, because then from there, we started growing it this way. We're like, hey, you know what? Believe it or not, I wish I would have had this first or second, right? I had the transaction coordinator, but I didn't get this until the very end. And I wish I would have built a stronger database relationship business early on. I didn't get to this part until much later. And so what we decided to do is we went down here. We went marketing manager because we were going so deep into online leads, we needed an ads manager. This is why I love going to Chime. And I'm like, I'll just take you back to Chime. And I'm like, well, you can just do it all right here, all the leads that we get. And we run some leads through Chime. You can see at the bottom right here, Thousand Oaks, and it tells us our CPL right over here, 23 and 22. It's a more expensive area, but the ROI is insane for us. So we now run a lot of it through outsourced companies like Chime and like Ylopo, which runs all the leads through Chime. But we had an ads manager that I trained, right? Because I'm really great on Facebook lead ads. So I trained our ads manager. I trained a social media manager for us. And then they became somebody who helps us with the content creation. And then a PR company, a graphic designer, newsletter manager. It can go deeper and deeper and deeper. I just want you to start looking at this and have you wrap your brain around the possibilities of now looking at this and saying, I understand. I'm building an actual company, right? An asset that I can turn around and hopefully pass on to somebody or sell and then pass on to somebody right in that way. And then the difference is there are also tools, and the tools are what make, for me, what made this all possible. But I want to go into the tools that we use, because not only do we use Chime, but we use a lot of the partnerships that Chime has. If you go over here with Chime, you can go here and find out what other things Chime works with, and then you start looking at the tools, right? So for us, like I said, we've got Google PPC. You can go Facebook lead ads. You can go Facebook dynamic ads, which are now called real estate ads. They just retarget Instagram and Facebook. So in this case, it's just Facebook, but you can also do Instagram, and they're retargeted here. Listing ads and automated farming, which actually sends out real mail. Now, those are all so those are all tools to help your asset be worth more. Same thing with the CMA and everything else. Now, as we go down a little bit more, you've got the AI and all these other great companies. They've broken down all these great things that say, hey, you can also simplify your life by adding more tools like API Nation. And we use Zapier. We love Zapier. I've never used this other company right here called Integrately. I've never used them, so I don't know, but these are all integration services. Now we go down, we use virtual tours. We don't use iSpy. We have our own camera that has everything built in, right? So a lot of you do as well. But as we go down, we have other options. We use Mojo Dialer, listings to leads as well. And then Constant Contact, we've used on and off. We prefer MailChimp and BombBomb. That's who we use. And Slide Broadcast. I mean, if you're not dropping voicemails as part of the whole process, you're missing out. Now you can go in here, all these different types of companies. These are all tools that'll help you grow your asset, right? And they're right here on the very top. So know that. Now let's go back to this chart, because as I start looking at technology, I'm like, hey, you know what I've noticed? We need a director of tech. We need somebody to be able to handle the technology and make sure that it integrates into everything, kind of like an integrator, right? And so what I'm looking at is I'm looking at somebody who can take a look at all of our technology now, all of our, what we're calling tools, and take a look and say, hey, you know what? This actually works better with this. You know, you're on Chime, but have you guys even taken a look at how the AI fully works? Have you turned it on for this, for that? As you start growing, you eventually do need somebody like that, especially in transition of selling the business, because now all of the actual tools that you have, because I was guilty of this, and I know you are too. All the tools we have, we know we're actually using a great portion of everything they have. Whereas before, I would look at things and I'm like, I know I have this for a reason and I'm paying for it, but I'm not using it that well, or I'm not using it at all. Should I even keep it? And that's the problem a lot of us face, because we like shiny objects. I'm not going to lie. I love shiny objects. So let me go through and show you some of the things that we have over here. Here on this side, we have Facebook lead ads, Ylopo, Facebook lead ads, promoted ads, Google LSA, Ylopo, Google PPC through Chime, Google OOC through Ylopo, mailers. These are all tools that help our assets grow. You can see all of these here on this side: database retargeting, newsletters, signs, open house, RedX, circle dialing, all these amazing things that even Chime seller leads and Ojo leads that run all through Chime. And here's all the tech on this side that we have. Again, same thing. These are tools that we have: Chime CRM, Chime AI, VirtueDesk through our virtual assistants, Ylopo IDX, all of these amazing things. And I'm showing this to you to show you that the tools that you have enhance the relationships that you want to create. And a lot of us don't look at it that way. A lot of us just look at tools as tools, and we don't look at them having the ability to increase these relationships. But all these tools, if you pick the right ones, this is why I love Chime so much. If you pick the right ones, they only increase your asset. And so I want you to take a look at what you currently are using right now, whether it's Chime or not. I want you to take a look at it and say, what am I missing? Because if I take you back right now to Chime, we'll come back to this. But if I take you back to Chime, right, we've got all of these tools on the top. And I can guarantee most of you don't know what all of these do. And if we take a look at this, right, and we go through all of them, do you even know how this is arranged and why this should be arranged a certain way? Like, why do we have reevaluate score here and then the lead score? That's how we do it, right? Why do we do that? And what about the lead pond? Do you even use it? What about lead generation and tracking, right? Purchasing leases. We don't use this. We use Sisu, but we love that this is available here. And what about here on this side with all of your listings in the hot sheet? Do you use that, right? We, of course, use lead generation so we can track it there. But then when it comes to all of these other great things, are you using them? This is one of my favorite things, the activities timeline. This is where a lot of us start when it comes on the day. It says, hey, okay, we know where we're going to start. Here are active leads for this week. This is what they're doing. And we've got all of their information right here based on the activity. And it starts 3 minutes ago, right? For us, because this one just, look at, they already opened the email alert. Jacqueline's searching for property. This one opened, this goes in 6 minutes. Don't even tell me that if you don't start in this place right here, you won't get business in 1 week. This is telling you everyone who's active. Again, these are tools. And the challenge is a lot of us aren't even using the tools that are already there, that we're already paying for. All these tools enhance your asset as a business, right? And I want you to start changing your mindset on that, because you are running a business. You're running something that has value. And the more you work on the tools, the right tools, the more your asset will increase. Now, I also want to touch on AI, because as we start growing in this whole AI world, you've got some automation from some companies out there, and then real AI, which is Chime. They actually use real machine learning. And there's a big difference. We've been over this. When you look at something like AI, for me, it's a massive asset. Because if I were, and I'm going to the extremes here, if I was going to sell Tristan and Associates, which I'm not, but if I was going to, and I would take a look at me and say, hey, how many ISAs do we have? And do we have the AI functioning at the highest level possible so that it's reaching out to people that are on our website, incoming leads, old leads that re-engage, and everywhere else in between, so that I know I'm using the AI to the maximum capacity so that I don't need to have as many ISAs. Because the more ISAs I have, the more I have to pay out. And now my asset is worth less because that takes it into consideration. Plus, I can net more. So take a look at something like AI, which allows us to scale faster. It allows us to grow our business so that we can net more, especially if you have online leads coming in. So these are the tools I want you to take a look at. This is how I want you to go in deeper in your business. Now let's go back to this chart. So if you are going to go this route with Director of Tech, and you're looking at somebody who keeps we put them under here. We don't put the sales agent on this side. We put them here because tech and sales for us is so integrated with Sisu and Chime. These people need to understand technology at a high level. That's why we have them there. So sales agent accountability, a web developer if you need one, UX designer. And now you won't need any of these if you've got Chime. We've built out other things, so that's why we had these there in the first place. And then database upkeep, somebody who just makes sure that all the processes on your database on Chime are working correctly. Somebody that can go to the back end and say, hey, you know what, I'll take you through this. Come with me on this one. If you go over here and you go through and you're like, hey, you know what, you didn't have your AI assistant turned on. Let me turn it on, right? This is what we had. And we're like, I had one of my friends who works with me. He says, hey, why don't we put in little Grogu in here, right? And if you watch this, I love Grogu and I love Star Wars. So we tested this out and it worked really well. So now we have this little guy on the chat. But this is what our integrator does when it comes to technology. So this is why I love having somebody here and says, hey, we need to do a better job on the database upkeep, and then mining data from the internet. We have somebody who's mining information through LinkedIn, through other sites to be able to make the information that we have on Chime, all of these leads that we have here, to have them to have us have deeper, richer information as well. Because sometimes they only come in with an email. And even though if you have an iPhone, you can get about half of them in the United States through iMessaging with that email, can't get all of them. So now let's go up to these two as you start thinking about growing your asset, right? Your real estate team, and look, let me reiterate this, whether it's just you don't need a team, but you do need staff, or whether it's an actual team where you have buyer's agents and listing agents and so forth, or a brokerage, right? There is no right answer, because I've seen some amazing single mega agents that net a ton of money and all they have is staff. So there is no right way of doing that. Now, we'll go over to the left, concierge communications, that's what we call it, but really in essence is making sure that our past clients are taken care of. That means that once a transaction closes, I don't drop the ball. And I put this in place here because this was a massive weakness of mine. So as I started growing, there was no way I could keep up with, at the time, hundreds of past clients that we were closing. And I was like, I can't do it, because I'm also doing this and that. So I said, why don't we start a department that helps us with this? And so that's where we're at when it comes to this section over here. We call this concierge and transaction coordinator. We have them in there. We don't use an in-house one. We use a friend of mine who started her own company out here. And then we have HR and onboarding and exiting. The onboarding and exiting is really taken care of by my director of operations at this point. We realized that for us, for the team, not for the brokerage, for the team, we didn't need somebody who was just doing this on their own. And sometimes, in some cases, you find that human resources does that. Now, this to me is the biggest opportunity. It looks like Mickey Mouse now that I'm looking at it, maybe like with extended little ears. But this is absolutely great, because everyone that's listening in right now, you have an opportunity to increase your asset through attraction. And the world that we live in, I keep on saying this, but the world that we live in is more attraction-based than hunting-based. Look at social media. There's a reason we hire influencers to do things. There's a reason why billion-dollar companies hire people like the Kardashians, right? They hire people like Tony Hawk. They hire people like, why does a rock get paid so much? Look at his following on social media. Now, for me, I'm thinking, how can we do this and create a bigger asset for our brand, for our real estate company? Right? It came down to, for us, the tools, and that was social media, specifically social, that helps us deliver video to our audience. Right. And of course, you know that Chime has a whole section that connects your YouTube channel to your site. So make sure you use that. Now, for us, I thought we need a video editor. Actually, we need quite a few. And so as we started looking at this more, we're like, hey, we probably need somebody for YouTube SEO and ads. And we need a video editor assistant as well, because the one video editor is doing too much right now. And then here's where we're at right now. We're getting a creative director, somebody who's in charge of telling us as a brand, remember, because I'm looking to always increase my asset as the Tristan and Associates real estate brand. I'm looking to increase that asset. And in order to do that better, I need to be reaching out to my audience better, the consumer, who's my audience here, right? I have a specific audience. I'm trying to reach them, to connect with them and talk to them about real estate, but I want them to connect with me at a human level. And so I need somebody to come in and say, hey, creative director, this is their job. They're going to come in and say, hey, these are the opportunities you have. This is how you need to show up on video and social media. Let me outline that for you. You come up, you show up on camera, you do the rest, but here's the outline for you. This way you have consistency. And I know that based on what I'm looking at on the numbers, your audience is also connecting with you, right? That's the job of a creative director. That's where we're heading. We're always looking at people, right? Talented people and strong technology like Chime, like social media, to be able to grow our asset, because that's what it all comes down to.